What would you do if God told you to fight your greatest battle, not with swords, not with armies, but by simply walking, waiting, and trusting Him? Before Joshua stood Jericho, a city protected by massive walls, seemingly impossible to break. Israel had crossed into the Promised Land, but now a fortress stood between them and the victory God had promised. And then, God gave Joshua a battle plan that made no sense to human understanding. Moses was gone, and now Joshua carried the responsibility of leading Israel. He had served Moses. He had witnessed the wilderness. He had seen God provide again and again. But leading an entire nation into the Promised Land was a responsibility unlike anything he had ever carried. And before Jericho, Joshua faced a question every leader eventually faces. Will I trust God when what I see looks impossible? God had already commanded Joshua to be strong and courageous. The promise was not that Joshua would never face fear. The promise was that God would be with him. Then God gave Joshua his instructions, and they were unlike any military strategy Israel had ever heard. For 6 days, Israel was to march around Jericho. Once each day, the priests would carry the Ark of the Covenant. 7 priests would carry 7 trumpets made from ram's horns. The people were not to shout. They were to march in silence. And on the 7th day, they would march around the city 7 times. Then the trumpets would sound, and Joshua would command the people to shout. That was the plan. No siege machines, no assault on the gates, just obedience. At dawn, Israel moved. The priests carried the ark. The 7 priests carried their trumpets. Armed men walked ahead. Others followed behind, and around them stood the walls of Jericho. The Israelites marched, but they did not attack. They marched, but they did not shout. They simply obeyed. One day passed. Nothing happened. Then another. Still nothing. The people of Jericho watched from behind their walls. They saw Israel marching around them, but the Israelites did not attack. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Still nothing. Imagine obeying God when you cannot see what He is doing. Imagine walking around your greatest obstacle and seeing no change. Would you keep walking? Joshua did. Because faith does not always mean seeing the result. Sometimes faith means continuing to obey while the answer is still invisible. Then came the 7th day. Israel rose early, but this time they would not march once. They would march 7 times around Jericho, again and again and again. The first circuit, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the 6th, still silent, still waiting, still trusting. And then they began the 7th circuit. The people of Jericho watched. The priests continued forward. Joshua knew the moment had come. One final lap, one final act of obedience. And then Joshua gave the command. The priests lifted their trumpets. The silence was broken. Joshua commanded the people to shout, and Israel shouted. Thousands of voices erupted at once, not because the walls were already falling, but because they believed the God who had commanded them. Then the impossible happened. The walls of Jericho collapsed. The fortress that had stood before Israel became a path into the city. What human strength could not accomplish, God accomplished. Israel had not won because their weapons were greater. They had followed the command of God, and God had been faithful. But amid the destruction, one promise was remembered. Rahab, the woman who had protected the Israelite spies, and her family were spared. Joshua had commanded that she and those with her be brought out safely. The walls had fallen, but God had not forgotten those who had trusted Him. The story of Jericho is ancient, but its message is still alive. Because every one of us can face walls. Walls of fear, walls of disappointment, walls of rejection, walls that seem too strong to move. And sometimes, like Joshua, we may not understand what God is doing. But faith does not require us to understand everything. It requires us to trust the one who does. The walls did not fall because Israel was stronger than Jericho. They fell because God was faithful to His promise. Whatever wall stands before you today, do not give up. Keep trusting God. Keep obeying Him. Keep walking in faith. Your Jericho may look impossible, but nothing is impossible with God. Your wall may be standing today, but God is still faithful. Like, comment, and subscribe for more encouraging videos like this. God bless you, and thank you for watching.